I gave up my dream bike to prove I wasn't selfish. She called it irresponsible, said we couldn't afford luxuries. Then I found the hidden receipt for a $700 purse. That's when everything snapped. Turns out, I wasn't the one breaking our budget, or our trust. The engine purred under me like a heartbeat I'd finally tuned to match my own. Sunlight slipped through the wide glass of the dealership showroom, catching the deep liquid red of the bike's gas tank. I didn't touch the throttle, just sat there, hands relaxed on the grips, breathing in a moment I'd replayed in my head 1,000 times. 12 years of commuting in hand-me-down sedans. 10 years of maybe next year, as bonuses disappeared into car repairs and kids' braces. 2 years of ramen lunches and secondhand shoes, skipping vacations, putting every spare dollar into a separate account labeled simply Dream. And now here I was, on it, my bike. When the salesman clapped me on the shoulder and asked if I was ready to sign, I almost didn't trust my own legs to walk over. But I did. I signed the papers. I shook his hand. I took the keys like they were sacred. That was a Thursday. On Saturday, I rode the bike home from the dealer. Took the long way, naturally, through winding back roads, past old barns and fresh pavement. Helmet off in the driveway, I could hear birdsong and the faint hum of the neighbor's lawnmower. It was one of those golden early spring afternoons where everything felt like it might be okay for once. I parked the bike in the garage, rolled the door down, and stood there just smiling at it. That was the last time I felt uncomplicated joy. The next morning, Sarah found the receipt. She didn't come out to the garage to say anything. No, she waited until I was halfway through making Sunday pancakes, our routine. She held the paper like it was radioactive, fingers pinched at the corner. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like," she said, voice too calm. I tried to explain that I'd saved, that it hadn't touched our joint account, that it was mine. Money I'd squirreled away slowly, patiently, for years. Her expression didn't change. She said, "We have a mortgage and 2 kids, and you spent 10 grand on a toy." It hit like a slap. Not the words, but the way she said toy, like it was a slur, like my dream was something shameful. I told her I hadn't taken anything from the family, that I still paid every bill, still did the grocery runs, still coached our son's soccer team, that this was the one thing I'd wanted for myself. Her voice rose. She said it was selfish, that I was having a midlife crisis, that maybe it was time she looked into the accounts because clearly I couldn't be trusted. I stood there in my pajamas, holding a spatula, not knowing how to fight back without making everything worse. By Tuesday, the guilt had worked its way into my bones. I was raised to be the provider, the reasonable one. I canceled the insurance, called the dealership, arranged the return. It felt like swallowing gravel. They didn't even look surprised when I brought it back. Just handed me the paperwork with a sympathetic nod. On the way home, I stopped for gas, bought a soda I didn't want, sat in the car with the engine running and tried not to cry. It wasn't until a week later that I saw the charge. $723.57. Designer boutique. Name I didn't recognize. I asked Sarah about it that night. She blinked, paused just a moment too long, said it was a gift for her sister, a birthday present. I nodded like that made sense, but something twisted inside me. That night, after she went to bed, I opened the closet, found the bag tucked behind an old winter coat, empty. The box inside had once held a luxury brand purse, still had the receipt, so it wasn't for her sister. I stood there in the dim light of the hallway, the box in my hands, and thought about the bike, the dream I'd handed back. Thought about her calling me irresponsible while hiding $700 purses in the closet. That was the moment the guilt burned off. 2 days later, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, made a new spreadsheet, new tabs. One labeled household budget, one labeled shared costs, and one labeled simply personal autonomy. I wrote 50/50ths or nothing. We split all joint expenses. No exceptions, no more lies, no more sacrifices that only come from one side. I didn't ask permission. I didn't suggest a conversation. I clicked save. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to apologize for wanting something of my own. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek like nothing had changed. The purse box was still buried behind the coats. The lies still hung between us like invisible wire, taut, waiting to slice open whatever trust we had left. But she made coffee, buttered toast, reminded me to take out the trash. I nodded through it all like I wasn't holding a quiet storm behind my ribs. I didn't bring it up. Not yet. Not because I was afraid of the confrontation, but because I needed to be sure. I needed facts. Proof. Not another fight built on accusations and gaslit memories. I started watching closely. Not obsessively. Strategically. She used a different card when she ordered things online. One I hadn't noticed before. It wasn't tied to our joint account. When she paid for lunch with friends, I saw the quick flash of a platinum card I knew we didn't share. I checked the banking app. Nothing. So I pulled our last 6 months of statements. 3 hours later, I had a list. 2 spa packages, a $450 facial appointment, recurring charges from a boutique gym we'd supposedly canceled. All paid with her personal card. None of it ever discussed. Meanwhile, I'd canceled Netflix to save $15 a month. I looked down at the list. Printer paper, black ink, no emotion, and felt the old self begin to harden. The part of me that had given up baseball weekends with the guys, said no to camping trips, sold the old guitar when money was tight. That man had bled quietly for years, and now he was done bleeding. That evening, she noticed the change. "You're quiet," she said over dinner. "Just thinking," I replied. She smiled. "About what?" I didn't answer. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I know it was hard returning the bike, but I really admire you for putting the family first. That's when I knew she didn't see it. Not really. She didn't see the sacrifice. Only the result. A victory. I stayed calm. I didn't lash out. But later that night, I took the box out from the closet. Set it on the kitchen counter. Beside it, I laid the receipt. I didn't say a word. She found it the next morning. I heard the pause in her footsteps. The slow inhale. Then, from the kitchen, her voice. Tighter this time. What's this supposed to mean? I walked in, met her eyes. You tell me, she laughed. A brittle, defensive sound. It's a gift, for myself. Is that a crime now? No, I said. But calling me irresponsible while hiding this? That's not just hypocrisy. That's manipulation. Her expression twisted. So, now I'm manipulative? You called my dream selfish. You made me feel like a child for spending my own money, while you were spending more, secretly. So, yeah, I'd call that manipulative. She said nothing, just stared at me, like she was seeing a version of me she didn't quite recognize. Good, that version was done apologizing. I picked up the papers I'd printed the night before. Expenses, hidden charges, totals. Laid them next to the box. Starting next month, we split all joint expenses 50/50ths. Groceries, mortgage, kids' clothes, everything. What's left, you can do what you want with. So can I. She blinked. You're serious? I nodded. Dead serious. No more pretending we're on the same page when we're living in different books. She didn't argue. She just stood there. And for once, she didn't have a script ready. That was the moment something shifted. Not in her, but in me. I wasn't asking anymore. I wasn't negotiating for space in my own life. I was taking it. The first few days after I laid down the new rules were quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet, like the stillness before a storm rolls in. She didn't say much. Neither did I. We passed each other like coworkers after a bad meeting. Polite, distant, calculating. She didn't bring up the purse again. Didn't apologize. But I noticed the gym charges stopped. So did the boutique deliveries. Whether it was guilt, fear, or just strategy, I couldn't say. I started using the garage again. Not just to store tools, but to think. I'd sit on the empty workbench with a beer in hand, the spot where the bike used to sit still, marked by a faint rubber scuff. I kept the keychain, though, just the ring and tag. Hung it from a hook like a reminder next time I don't give it back. One evening, about a week later, I found a fresh list on the fridge. Groceries this week. Neat handwriting, 2 columns. Essentials on the left, her usual specialty items on the right. An unspoken signal. Split costs, shared responsibility. So I added my own column. Coffee, work snacks, ramen noodles. Old habits die hard. She didn't say anything when she saw it the next morning. Just raised an eyebrow. We'll need to coordinate dinners. Yeah, I said. We will. That weekend we had friends over. Couples we'd known for years. Usually she did the entertaining. Grazing boards, wine pairings, the whole Pinterest production. This time I grilled. Simple burgers. Beer on ice. No background jazz, no forced laughs. People noticed the shift. You could feel it in the air. At one point I overheard her say to a friend in the kitchen, "He's just different lately. Like he's drawing these hard lines." Her friend asked, "Is that a bad thing?" She didn't answer right away. I wanted to believe she was reflecting that maybe she was realizing how far things had drifted, but I'd stopped counting on that. I was done waiting for mutual understanding to catch up. Sunday evening, we sat down for our usual weekly planning. The calendar, the schedules, the logistics of raising 2 kids, and surviving Monday. She opened her planner. "So, about next month's trip to see my parents." I stopped her. "I won't be going." Her pen froze. "Excuse me? I've taken exactly 0 days for myself in 2 years. I'm using my time off for something else." "What else?" I met her eyes. "That's not your concern." It was a quiet bomb. She stared at me like I'd said something obscene. "You're skipping a family visit. That's my family," I said. "Includes me. And I'm tired of being the only one making compromises." She set the pen down slowly. "You're really serious about this new version of you?" I nodded. "I'm not a new version. I'm just done being the version that kept saying yes while getting nothing in return." She looked at me like she didn't know who she was married to anymore. And maybe she didn't, because for the first time, I wasn't trying to be understood. I was being clear. I didn't expect her to accept it quietly, but I also didn't expect what came next. She didn't fight the new budget rules, didn't complain when I turned down the trip. What she did was more subtle. She started reframing things. Tiny edits in conversation meant for our friends, her sister, the neighbors. "He's been going through a phase," she said with a soft chuckle when someone asked why we weren't joining the group ski weekend. "You know how men get at a certain age, chasing identity or whatever." It was always delivered lightly. A joke. Something to laugh off. But every word carried the same message. I'm still the reasonable one. He's the one acting out. I said nothing the first few times. Let it slide. I was trying to be patient, to pick my battles. But then came the couple's dinner. Her friend Olivia and her husband came over. Decent people, if a little too comfortable with wine-fueled honesty. Midway through dinner, Olivia turned to me, smiling like she was about to say something clever. "So, you returned the bike, right?" she said. "Sarah told me. That was really mature of you." I looked at Sarah. She smiled at her plate like it wasn't a landmine she'd just dropped. "I returned it," I said slowly, "because she accused me of being irresponsible. Then I found the $700 purse she bought and hid in the closet. The silence that followed was sharp enough to slice steak." Sarah's smile cracked. "I told you that was a misunderstanding." "No," I said. It was a pattern, one I don't let slide anymore. Olivia's husband cleared his throat. Well, that's awkward. I think the word you're looking for is honest, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't get angry. But that moment, that was a line in the sand. After they left, Sarah cornered me in the kitchen. What the hell was that? That, I said, was me refusing to be rewritten in someone else's story. She narrowed her eyes. So now you're the victim? No, I said. I'm just finally done pretending this marriage is built on anything mutual. She stood there, stunned. Maybe it was the calm in my voice. Maybe it was because I didn't storm off or beg for understanding. I just stood there, unmoved. Later that night, she came into the bedroom holding the purse box, set it down on the dresser. I'll return it, she said. I looked at her. Don't bother, that won't fix anything. She hesitated. Then what do you want? What I wanted. I wanted a time machine. I wanted my damn bike. I wanted the years I'd spent apologizing for wanting something of my own. But what I said was simple. Respect. She nodded slowly, like she was hearing the word for the first time, not just understanding it, feeling the weight of what it meant, now that it wasn't being given freely. And for once, I didn't feel the need to fill the silence. The next morning, I found the purse gone from the dresser. No note, no explanation, just absence, her quiet attempt at erasing evidence. But it didn't feel like a gesture of goodwill. It felt like PR cleanup, like she was managing optics, not repairing trust. That evening, she cooked my favorite. Chili rubbed ribs, garlic potatoes, grilled corn, the works. It used to be a peace offering, a soft truce. But this time I tasted the effort and felt nothing. I thanked her, ate in silence. She kept glancing at me, waiting for some reaction. Some sign that the old dynamic was still intact, that I was still reachable through comfort, through small gestures. But I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for change. Later I sat alone in the garage. The bike's absence felt less like a loss now and more like a scar, visible, permanent, instructive. I could see the outline where it once stood, just empty space and a single oil stain I hadn't cleaned up. I didn't want to. Around 9 p.m., she came in, barefoot, hoodie over her pajamas. She leaned against the doorframe. Do you hate me now? She asked. It wasn't sarcastic. It was soft, careful. No, I said, but I don't trust you. She nodded, like she'd expected that. I get that. Do you? I asked. She didn't answer right away. I guess I didn't think it would matter so much. The purse, I mean. It wasn't just the purse, I said. It was the gaslighting, the performance, making me feel like I was the reckless one. While you were making choices in secret. She came closer. I panicked. When I saw that bike in the garage, I thought you were pulling away, that maybe it was a midlife thing and you were planning to leave. That's not on me, I said. That's on whatever story you built in your head. You never asked why I wanted it. So why did you? I looked up at her, because I needed to remember what it felt like to choose something for myself without asking first. She looked like she wanted to say something, argue maybe, but she didn't. She sat on the workbench across from me. I've been scared, she admitted, of losing control, of watching everything we built change. It's already changed, I said. You just didn't notice until I stopped asking for permission. She sat with that for a while. I don't know how to fix it, she finally said. I'm not sure you can, I told her. Some things don't go back. They go forward, different. We sat in silence. In the distance, I heard a neighbor's wind chime, soft against the night. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the explosive way. Just tired. Stripped down. But underneath that fatigue was something new. Clarity. She looked at me again. So where does this leave us? I didn't answer right away, because honestly I wasn't sure. But I knew one thing. Wherever it was, I'd be driving. A week passed without a single argument. No raised voices, no slammed doors, no passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. On the surface, things looked functional, peaceful even. She was careful with words. I was careful with silence. We moved around each other like two people trying not to knock over something fragile neither of us could name. But beneath the calm was something else entirely. An unspoken audit of years, of choices, of who we'd each become. One night, I stayed late at work. Not because I had to, just because it felt better than going home. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, scrolling through listings, used motorcycles, low mileage, older models. I wasn't planning anything. Not yet, but just seeing them made something loosen in my chest. I remembered a conversation from years ago, back when we'd just bought the house. We were sitting on lawn chairs in the bare backyard, drinking gas station soda, talking about someday. She'd asked what I'd do if money weren't an issue. I said I'd ride across the Southwest. No destination, just me, the road, and time. She laughed and said, "You'd get bored in 2 days." Maybe I would have. But that wasn't the point. The point was, I never got to find out. That night, back at home, I logged into our joint budgeting software, made a copy of the file, labeled it solo. Then I ran the numbers, bills, food, mortgage, insurance, what my half looked like, what life would look like if we really did this 50-50ths, and if it didn't hold. She walked in while I was staring at the screen. No makeup, hair tied up, hoodie sleeves pushed to her elbows. She looked like the girl I'd married, except older and somehow further away. "You working?" she asked. "Planning," I said. "For what?" "For what happens if this doesn't hold." She stood there, then sat on the edge of the couch. "You're already thinking of leaving." "No," I said. "I'm thinking of not being blindsided again." She nodded slowly. "That's fair." I closed the laptop. "I don't want to end this. But I also won't keep living in something that feels like a performance." Her voice dropped. "Do you think I'm fake?" "No," I said. I think you got too good at telling yourself a version of the truth that made you comfortable, and you never noticed it didn't include me. She swallowed hard. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, I said. But you did. There it was. Not an accusation. A statement. And she didn't try to soften it. She just whispered, so what now? I took a breath. Now we see what happens when the playing field's finally even. When I stop folding myself in half to keep the peace. And if I can't handle that, I looked her in the eye. Then at least I'll know. And next time I buy something for myself, I won't be asking if it's okay. I'll just be riding. The balance didn't snap. It shifted. She started paying attention. To receipts. To whose turn it was to do school drop-offs. To how often I stayed late at work without her asking why. We were still sharing a house. Still putting dinner on the table together. Still passing salt like a married couple. But underneath, it was all recalibration. One night I came home to find the kids already in bed and the lights dimmed. On the counter sat a piece of printer paper. A color-coded breakdown of our monthly budget. Expenses in green. Her contributions in blue. Mine in red. It wasn't a peace offering. It was acknowledgement. She'd written at the bottom in small, blocky letters, "Let me know if I missed anything." I stared at it longer than I probably should have. Not because it was perfect, but because it was effort. And effort, lately, had become a kind of currency. Later, as I rinsed out my coffee mug, she came into the kitchen. We didn't speak, just existed side by side, comfortable enough to be quiet. "Do you think we'll make it?" she asked softly. I didn't answer right away. "We're trying," I said finally. "That's more than we were doing before." She nodded. "I don't want to go back to how we were." "You mean before the fight?" "No," she said. "I mean before the honesty." That landed somewhere deep. A few days later, I met with a guy from work who was selling his old bike. Just to check it out, I told myself. Black frame, matte finish, stripped-down design, clean title, decent price. He let me take it around the block. When I got back, I just stood there staring at it, hands still on the handlebars. The man tilted his head. "You okay?" I smiled a little. "Yeah, just remembering how much I missed this." Back home, I didn't say anything to her right away. Just went into the garage and stood in the empty spot where my dream had once sat. Ran my fingers over the faint tire marks still there. She found me an hour later. "You went to see one, didn't you?" I didn't lie. "Yeah. Did you buy it?" I turned. Would it matter if I had? Her eyes didn't flinch. "Not anymore." And that's when I knew something was actually changing. Not just in me, but in her too. Because she didn't follow it up with guilt or strategy. Just left me alone in the garage, with space, with the possibility of a decision that was mine. I didn't buy the bike that day. I could have. The money was there. The seller was flexible. But something told me to wait. Not out of hesitation, but clarity. This time I wouldn't buy it just to reclaim something. I'd buy it when it felt like moving forward, not proving a point. That weekend we split the grocery list without comment. Her half, my half. No reminders, no subtle jabs. She picked up name-brand cereal. I didn't say a word. I bought a 6-pack of craft beer. She didn't blink. It was transactional, but clean. At checkout, the clerk asked if we were paying together. We both said no at the same time, then laughed a little. It was the first laugh that didn't feel like a cover-up. Later that night, she brought 2 glasses of wine to the living room. Not as a gesture, just because she wanted to sit beside me while we watched something neither of us cared much about. Halfway through the episode, she said, "I started going through some of my old purchases. Canceling things I didn't even remember subscribing to." I nodded. "That's good." She paused. "Not because of guilt. I just realized I was buying things to feel control." "I know," I said. "I bought the bike for the same reason." She looked over. "You said it was your dream." It was. But it was also armor. A way to say I mattered when I didn't feel like I did. She sat with that, then said, "I don't want to be the kind of person who needs you to be smaller so I can feel okay." That line stuck with me. Maybe because for so long I'd been making myself smaller. Quietly, steadily, without complaint. She continued, "If you want the bike, get it. Not because you're angry, just because it still means something." I didn't respond. I just took a sip of wine and let the silence stretch. The next day, I went back to see the seller. The bike was still there, still perfect, but I told him I needed one more week. Just one. He didn't mind. He said he could wait. And that's when I knew. I wasn't waiting for her permission anymore. I was giving myself permission to make this mine. Not as revenge, not as proof, but as a beginning. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't trying to balance anyone else's expectations. I was building something of my own, and it finally felt steady. That week, I started waking up before my alarm, not out of anxiety, out of something sharper, resolve. I'd sit at the kitchen table while the house was still quiet, sipping coffee in the dark, going over plans, small ones, private ones. I printed a quote and pinned it above my desk in the garage. "Build the life you want, not the one you're told to be grateful for." By Thursday, I'd made my decision. I texted the seller, "Let's do it. I'll bring cash Saturday." He replied with a thumbs up and a simple, "Glad it's going to someone who gets it." That night, I didn't hide it. I told her over dinner, "I'm buying the bike." She didn't blink, didn't ask how much or what color. Just said, "Good, you waited. That matters." I nodded, not needing anything more. But later, as we were doing the dishes, she spoke again, voice low, deliberate. "I've been thinking a lot about how much of our marriage was built on expectation. Not communication, just roles we slipped into without ever naming them." I dried a plate. "Yeah, me too." She leaned on the counter. "And I kept rewriting your needs into faults, because they didn't match mine." I looked over at her. "You did, but I let you." That landed. She nodded. I'm not going to pretend a bike fixes all that, I said. But it's the first thing I've chosen without trying to predict your reaction. I noticed, she said. And I didn't try to stop you. That's something too. There was a long pause. Comfortable, sad, real. We weren't hugging. We weren't smiling. But we were finally seeing each other without fog. And then she said, "You'll ride it home Saturday?" "Yeah. I'll keep dinner warm." It wasn't romance. It wasn't a reconciliation anthem. It was just respect. A fragile kind of peace. The kind built not on sweeping gestures, but steady, conscious steps. That night I walked into the garage and ran my hand along the empty space one last time. It wouldn't be empty much longer. But the man who would walk that bike in Saturday? He wasn't the same one who gave it up the first time, and thank God for that. Saturday came like a quiet promise. The sun was already high when I pulled into the seller's driveway. The bike stood there waiting, just as sleek, just as still. He handed me the keys with a grin and a pat on the back. No fanfare, no speeches. Just two men acknowledging that something real was happening. The ride home was slow, not because of traffic, because I wanted to feel every second of it. The vibration in my hands, the stretch of the open road, the curve of the wind around my shoulders. Not freedom exactly, something tighter, more earned. At a red light, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in a storefront window. Helmet on, jacket zipped, face unreadable. But I could feel it in my chest, the beginning of something mine. When I pulled into the driveway, she was already on the porch. No camera, no applause, just her, arms folded watching. She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either. I parked, killed the engine, and waited. She walked over slowly, looked at the bike, then at me. "Feels different this time," she said. "It is." She ran her fingers over the handlebar. "Looks good on you." I nodded. It always did. Inside, the house smelled like roast chicken and rosemary. Music played low from the kitchen speaker. Nothing dramatic, just enough to fill the space. We ate in quiet, comfortable this time, mutual. Afterward, I sat down with the kids, helped with homework, laughed at dumb cartoons. I didn't bring up the bike, neither did they. But later, my son asked if he could just sit on it sometime. I smiled. "Yeah, kid, someday soon." That night, I stood at the window looking out at the garage. The bike was parked exactly where it used to be, in the space that had waited for it. But I didn't see a machine. I saw a line, one I had drawn and kept. She came up behind me, rested her chin on my shoulder. "I don't know where we go from here," she said. I didn't pretend to know either. "Forward? Slowly?" She nodded. "But this time, you don't give your dream back." "No," I said. "This time I keep it. And if I ever have to choose again between who I am and who someone wants me to be, I choose me." She didn't answer, but she didn't pull away. And for now, that was enough.